So in a world where we have blood magic, where you can sacrifice babies to summon demons, where there's dragons that can eat people and burn cities and countries to the ground, and horsemen who can rape and pillage entire cultures into oblivion, one has to wonder, what is the most terrifying, horrifying, devastating force in the universe? Well, it's not the Great Other. The most terrifying force in the Game of Thrones universe is the Friendzone. If you look at it, a lot of the core tragedies in the history of Westeros are caused by the Friendzone. Most of the devastating conflicts in history were caused by people being put into the Friendzone. So I want you to keep that in mind when we start to go through this list. Is women, thoughts out there, if you friendzone men, this is what's going to happen. Okay, so the first one's a little bit of a stretch, but it's pretty obvious Stannis isn't getting much in his marriage. He married Selyse out of a political marriage, and not only is she hideous, but she seems like a really nasty, awful woman who's gloomy and has the personality of a clam. Now, some might think someone with the personality of a clam would go well with someone with the personality of a lobster, but when you get too many crustaceans together, it doesn't end well. But yeah, so more or less by the time of Game of Thrones, they've had one child. In the show, they had a couple babies that were stillborn, and she keeps them in tubes for some reason, which is weird. But basically, Stannis needed some. He was a man. He was a manly man. He was an alpha man. And he's like, I need to get some. To quote the song Black and Yellow, I'm stuck out here on Dragonstone. My own wife has me in the friend zone. So this super hot waifu from across the sea came and offered to have sex with him. And not only have sex with him, but if he had sex with her, having sex with her would grant her super magical powers that would enable him to take over the kingdom and get the revenge he wanted on his brothers who married much hotter women. Then Stannis was like, sign me up. Azor Ahai, a flaming heart. So, because Stannis was friend-zoned by his wife, he would go on to join a demonic cult and launch a bid to become the king of Westeros. So just keep that in mind. Genna Lannister is known for having a somewhat different personality than the rest of the people in her family. While the Lannisters try to be regal and kind of uptight, she's a lot more, how would you put it, loud? She really kind of embodies the whole hear me roar thing. So she was quite a looker in her youth, but she was betrothed to Aemon Frey. Now the Freys tend to be a slimy bunch of cock-sucking backstabbers, and Aemon Frey was kind of like Freyness distilled to its most Frey form. So he was a slimy, weak, ugly man. However, even slimy, weak, ugly men need love. And Genna didn't really give him much. They technically had 4 children together, but let's be honest. Is Genna the kind of woman who would let someone like Aemon Frey touch her? I don't think so. The man's had to endure being in a loveless, friend-zoned marriage with a woman who was hot and gradually became obese over time, and he had to live with the knowledge he never got to hit that Lannister ass. So what he did is he went to his father. He's like, Walder, I need some territory. I need something to restore my feelings as a man. And it's like, okay, I got this idea. There's this asshole Robb Stark, who, by the way, friend-zoned Rosalind Frey. He's like, I'm not going to marry her. It's okay if she's just a friend. What are you going to do? And he's like, I'm gonna kill Robb Stark and his Bannerman. I'm going to give you River Run, son. And that's going to be, like, because I know I treat my family like shit, but being in a marriage with a Lannister and being friend-zoned with that, I mean, that's the only good thing about the Lannisters is that they're hot. So, Red Wedding was caused by Aemon Frey getting friend-zoned. So, I don't think we actually know what happened between King Aerys and Joanna if King Aerys was just a creepy asshole and just leered at her a lot, or if they were lovers at some point and Tywin was sloppy seconds. I don't know, but I'm going to make shit up because that's what we're doing as we're going through and exposing the friend zone for what it is. So it's well known that Joanna and Aerys had something going on. Whether it was just that Aerys liked to look at her because he found someone almost as blonde and pretty as himself, or they were actually having sex, who knows. But there was something going on. However, Joanna went and married Tywin, and one of the 4 times Tywin smiled was he's like, I stole your waifu, King Aerys. She's my waifu now. Not only my waifu, but my wife. So he said, suck on that. You suck on my gold shit bricks. So then Aerys threw a temper tantrum, and because he couldn't keep hitting that Lannister, he just went nuts. He's like, if I can't have her, I just go start burning shit. So Aerys started to burn shit, and then he's like, this is kind of arousing, but I need that Lannister ass. So he went after Joanna, and Tywin's like, fuck this noise. I'm going back to Casterly Rock to be with my waifu. Fuck you, Aerys. And that was the reason that Tywin didn't come to his aid during the rebellion. That was kind of what caused the breakup between the two. Some might say it was because Jaime was named into the Kingsguard. Some might say it's because he refused to marry Cersei to Rhaegar. But we all know what it was. Aerys couldn't handle the fact that Tywin stole his waifu and that Joanna had friend-zoned him. And he tried to take back what was his. He tried to get into the friend zone, but Tywin was there blocking his way with Casterly Rock. So because Aerys II got friend-zoned by Joanna, Robert's rebellion happened. So we've got the reverse friend zone here, or I guess it's not really reverse, it's 2 men. So Jon Connington, he's a little queer, you know what I mean? Then again, Rhaegar is so pretty, I don't think it's necessarily gay if you have a thing for Rhaegar, because he's prettier than most of the female characters, and that's saying a lot given that this is Game of Thrones. I mean, he looks like a slightly more feminine version of Emilia Clarke. So, yeah, anyways. But anyway, so Jon Connington was like friends with Rhaegar, and he's like, this dude is the greatest thing ever. Rhaegar played his harp, and Jon Connington was just all over him. And what happened? The Civil War happened. Jon Connington was trying to impress Rhaegar. He's like, I'm going to be an honorable man. Rhaegar is honorable and noble. I'm not going to burn this city down, the bells, or whatever the Battle of the Bells is. I'm not going to burn it down. I'm going to try and find Robert Baratheon the honorable way. And that didn't work out, and because of that, the Royalists lost the war. But Jon Connington's like, no, I'm going to find this random kid who's obviously not, obviously is Rhaegar's son, Aegon. He's not a Blackfire, he's obviously Rhaegar's son. And I'm going to groom him, raise him. I'm going to groom him to be the next king of Westeros. And I'm going to get this big army together, the Golden Company. We're going to go invade Westeros. And I am going to put Rhaegar's son on the throne. And then I'm going to be the power under the throne. I said under the throne, not behind the throne. Because Rhaegar, he friend-zoned me, so I'm going to impress Rhaegar. Even though Rhaegar's dead, I'm going to put his son on the throne, and then he's going to be the next Rhaegar. It's kind of like what Littlefinger wants to do with his Littlefinger and Sansa. It's kind of disturbing. But that's the power of the friend zone made the Royalists lose Robert's rebellion, and it led Jon Connington to lead an invasion of Westeros. Just the way it is. Okay, now we have a real instance of the reverse friend zone here. Baelor. Because Baelor the Based was like, look, this whole sister marriage thing, I know it's like incest is wincest, but a thought is a thought, and I am the king of the thought patrol. So he locked up his sister Dana in what became known as the Maiden Vault, and he wouldn't have sex with her. Because she was his friend. She was his sister and his friend. There was no hanky-panky going down. So there was no hanky-panky going down. So Dana went and got it from the guy Prince Aegon, who would later be known as Aegon the Unworthy. And together they produced a heir who came to be known as Daemon Blackfyre, the founder of the Blackfyre dynasty, which would cause four separate civil wars, and was one of the things that ultimately brought down the Targaryen dynasty, just all the infighting and all the stuff that happened within that. So had Baelor not friend-zoned his sister wife, and if he had have had sex with her like a good Mormon, then things would have been different. Then the Blackfyre rebellions never would have happened, and we wouldn't have gotten Fagon, and we wouldn't have had Varys, and history would have turned out very differently. So that's just something to keep in mind. Friend zoning goes both ways in Game of Thrones. Another example of the reverse friend zone is when Margaery got friend zoned by Renly. See, Renly, he didn't really like the women. He kind of liked the back of the woman, because then he could pretend that it was his buddy boy. But Renly just liked male bonding a bit too much, and there's nothing more gay than heterosexual. I don't know. Renly didn't like women, so he was like, "Look, Margaery, I know we're married, and I'm best buddies with your brother, so we're gonna just be friends. We aren't gonna consummate the marriage. We're just gonna be friends. I know we kind of have to produce an heir, but I'm just not gonna sleep with you, so our marriage will never be consummated and thus never be legitimate. And I don't think, I'm not planning on dying anytime soon, so this won't present any problems whatsoever." So what wound up happening, of course, was after Renly died, Margaery was like, "Look, I was friend zoned. I didn't have sex with the guy. He was too busy banging my brother." And they're like, "You're still a virgin. Let's marry her to, what's his name? Let's marry her off to Joffrey." And then that created the Lannister-Tyrell alliance. And had Margaery not been friend-zoned, had she been pregnant, then the Tyrells would have fought the Lannisters to press the claim of her unborn child. So keep that in mind. Renly, if you had to lay back and done your duty for Westeros, the War of the Five Kings wouldn't have turned out the way it did. We're getting into the hardcore friend zone here. We have Tyrion Lannister and Sansa. See, Tyrion's life revolves around the search for a waifu. And he would pay prostitutes to pretend to be his waifu. But much like body pillows, they only left him with the curse of the thought. But Tyrion had an opportunity to relive his childhood, because he had met Tysha, he had helped Jaime chase off some guys, and she had confessed her love to him. She's like, "You chased off those ruffians. I'm going to have sex with you, and we're going to have lots of children, and we're going to live happily ever after." And Tyrion, that whole thing didn't really turn out very well. But it's like, "I'm going to have another chance at this. I'm going to have a new waifu." So he gets married to Sansa, and he's like, "I'm going to save her from Joffrey." And actually, he did save her from Joffrey in a couple of cases. It's going to be like Tysha, this virgin wife who's going to be like, "Tyrion, I love you. You saved me. I want to bear your children." And that's how Tyrion thought it was going to turn out. But it didn't turn out that way. And Sansa's like, "No, I'm not going to let you touch me." And Tyrion's like, "Guess I'm not a rapist." Okay. And he's like, "Can we have sex eventually?" And she's like, "No, we can never have sex. You're permanently friend-zoned, dwarf." So Tyrion had to endure the rest of his life as being a member of the friend zone. And because of that, he became an alcoholic. And he just kept drinking and drinking and drinking. And he was like drunk at the wedding. And it made him like really antagonistic towards Joffrey, because he's like, "Look, I had to put up with all of this shit, and you couldn't even traumatize my waifu enough that she would just jump into my arms. Like, you can't even be a psychopath properly. I thought you would traumatize Sansa to the point where she'd just have sex with everyone, anyone, even a dwarf, to get away from you. But you couldn't do that, Joffrey. And when Tyrion was explaining it to him, Joffrey dropped the choke to death, and then Tyrion went berserk because he realized nobody loved him, and Sansa ran away and left him, and so he killed his father and threw the realm into complete chaos. So if Sansa had put out, then none of this would have happened, and Tywin would have restored the realm, and I don't know, someone else would have gotten fingered for Joffrey's death, maybe Pycelle. So Sansa, by friend-zoning Tyrion, you really screwed things up. And look at him. Look how sad Tyrion is in this. He became even more of an alcoholic and whoremonger than he was before. Robert Baratheon was alpha as fuck. He could just beat people's heads in with his warhammer. But there was one thing he had dreamed of since his childhood. A wife who would let him stay up past his bedtime and would let him play with his toys. Because his mother wouldn't let him play with his toys. His mother sent him to bed. He's like, you go to bed, mister. And then when his parents died, he had to put himself to bed. He couldn't stay up late. He had to be responsible. And he's like, and the prostitutes he had sex with, they would just leave and he would have to go to sleep. So he wanted a woman who would let him stay up past his bedtime. A woman who would be super special awesome. A woman who would be a bro herself. They could go like fight, and then they could have sex, and then they could drink together, and then they could go whoring together. It would be like a bromance, like a bromance. I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but you know what I'm saying. It would have been good. And Lyanna was like, I don't want to marry Robert. He's kind of a piece. He's an alcoholic asshole who's going to cheat on me with every prostitute in King's Landing and give me venereal disease. And Ned's like, oh, Lyanna, Robert's not that bad. He has redeeming characteristics. He's tall. He's strong. He can fuck like a horse, even if he's completely coated in venereal diseases. So Lyanna was like, fuck you, I'm gonna go and help Rhaegar friendzone Jon Connington. So she friendzoned Robert. She's like, Robert, I know you're my brother's best friend. I think we should just be friends. It's like that song, Why Can't We Be Friends? Why Can't We Be Friends? And it's that happened. And Robert was like, no, you took her away from me. You took her away from me. The only woman who would have let me stay up past my bedtime. And so he rose up against Aerys, who was throwing his own fit because he was friend-zoned by Joanna. So it was like the battle of the three friend-zoned. Because there's Robert who was friend-zoned. There was like Rhaegar who friend-zoned Jon Connington. And then there's Aerys the Second Targaryen who was friend-zoned. And so Robert launched the rebellion to get out of the friend zone. Unfortunately, Rhaegar beat him to it, and Lyanna died in childbirth. And Robert would spend the rest of his life in the friend zone. It would leave him a hollow shell of his former self. And I think that's a lesson for all of us. And now we conclude with possibly the two biggest friend zone characters in all of fiction. Next up, we have the Lord Commander of the Friend Zone. Now, Jorah Mormont was friend-zoned both by his wife and by Daenerys. Because there was this woman who was his waifu, and he won a tournament, and he named her Queen of Love and Beauty, and he got to marry her. However, she was like, look, I'm not going to have sex with you, Jorah, anymore unless you buy me nice stuff. And Jorah's like, well, how am I going to do that? And she's like, sell some poachers into slavery. I don't know. So Jorah did that, and he got her money. But then Ned found out about it, and Ned autistically exiled him to the Free Cities. So then he tried to make money for her to pay her money. But she just is like, you're not giving me enough stuff. So bye, Jorah. We can still be friends. It's not me, it's you. So then Jorah just was wandering around, and he was just drunk and sad. And then he met Dany, and he was like, I didn't believe in anything, but I believed that she's hot. And he's like, he saved her life a couple times. He gave her advice. He was kind of going for all that like sexy older man father thing, kind of doing a little Sean Connery. And then Daenerys is like, you're my dearest friend. You're my friend. He's not in love with me. He's my friend. And he was just like, my father might be Lord Commander of the Night Watch, but I'm Lord Commander of the Friendzone. And Jorah's been stuck there ever since, and that's just his life. His life is just one disappointment after another, one struggle to escape the Friendzone. He went across the world. He brought her Tyrion. He went and had some fat asshole rip scales off of him to try to cure him. But it was no use. He could never get his waifu back. And so Jorah Mormont turned to the powers of darkness, and like in Highlander, he beheaded the Night's King, and he absorbed the power of the others, and he became the Antichrist, and the world fell into darkness. And after he had conquered the world, Jorah sat alone in the lands of always winter with an ice sculpture of his beloved Dany. It's a true story. You heard it here first. That's how this series is going to end. Jorah's sitting there with an ice sculpture of his waifu. So that's your fault, Dany. If you hadn't friendzoned Jorah, none of this would have happened. No matter how I constructed this list, Littlefinger had to be number one. See, Littlefinger was in love with Cat. He's like, Cat, you're my waifu. You're the only thing that can save me from becoming a psychopathic, megalomaniacal supervillain. And she's like, that's cute, Pater. You're a friend to me. You're like a little brother to me. And he's like, no. And then Chad tried to steal his waifu away. A Chad named Brandon Stark. So he challenged him to a fight, and because the other guy was a Chad, he kicked his ass. And Cat's like, don't kill him. He's just a little boy playing at swords. And Littlefinger's like, oh, fuck you. I'm going to Littlefinger you, Cat. But this finger, it ain't so little. So Littlefinger decided he was going to become a supervillain. He was going to become a Bond villain. And he was going to Littlefinger the entire kingdom. He was going to become king. He was going to fuck over everybody and everybody related to everybody who he felt had wronged him. And he was going to destroy the entire system of feudalism just because he had gotten friend-zoned. And so began Littlefinger's 30-year-long scheme to cure the common cold, which I'm not even going to go into because it's too fucking complicated. But basically, everything that happens in Game of Thrones comes down to Littlefinger being angry about being friend-zoned by Cat. And then his efforts to try to groom and get with Cat 2.0, who's even hotter than the original and more waifu-ish, aka Sansa. So that is the story of Game of Thrones, my friends. It is the story of a long line of men and women who got friend-zoned, and either they become psychopaths and started burning people, or thought they were messiahs to save the world, or started civil wars, or just went completely insane, became a Bond villain named Littlefinger, and started a decade-long war that would lead to millions of deaths. The friend zone is real, ladies and gentlemen. The real enemy, the real threat, the real disaster in Game of Thrones is not the Great Other. It's not the Doom of Valyria. It's not even the dragons. It is the friend zone. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed me explaining this to you. I think now you understand Game of Thrones. You get it. You're in the know. So I'll talk to you guys later. This is Argent signing out.